We have an awesome guest today, and we have some great topics to talk about. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk. I love talking about marketing, advertising.
So, why don't we start off? Give us a minute or two about who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name's Justin Oberman. Um, I kind of got into advertising and marketing later in life than most people. I worked for my family's insurance company, we're into the fourth generation insurance company. At this point, I think it's over 100 years old. My brother runs it now, but I think it's an important part of the story where basically I grew up fourth generation of three generations above me of insurance sales. And if there's anybody who knows how to sell well, it's insurance people. Uh, Granted, there is a difference between selling one-on-one and selling to a group, right? That's a difference between as close and married as salespeople or marketing people are. That is a of the subtle differences between the two. But I sort of felt myself gravitating towards that. So they said, "Oh, you should be a copywriter." So I, got trained on sort of the tail end of the Mad Men era. Social was just becoming a thing, but print and commercials and TV commercials and all that stuff. As soon as the digital stuff happened, I immediately recognized the opportunity thanks to David Ogilvie, who pointed out that he actually believed that all copywriters should start in the direct mail department. So I saw immediately that the digital ad stuff was going to become very direct marketing, or what they call now performance marketing heavy. So I said, "Oh, I want to get into that." I actually did some work in direct mail for a while and really just then sort of oscillated between the two. And I think it turned me into a very versatile copywriter where I could go and I could write a brand campaign and I could also write a direct marketing campaign. And then I also became sort of obsessed with the history of advertising and pretty much have read anything that you can find on it. That gave me a sort of perspective that I think a lot of people don't have, because you begin to see these cycles and you begin to see how there's really like sort of nothing new under the sun. The same sort of things keep happening just with new tools and new technologies. I'm not a prophet or anything, but I remember in 2020, I said, "Oh, we're going to enter a creative revolutionary phase now in advertising. Branding's going to become important again. Everybody's going to be talking about creativity. And there's going to be a new technology that's going to come along that's going to make creativity even easier." And lo and behold, and there's going to be unrest in the world and chaos and stuff like that, because it just seems like it goes together. And lo and behold, that's what happened. But that's okay, because in 2030, the 2030s are probably going to ricochet back to performance marketing and all that kind of stuff. And that's just the cycle that it goes through. Anyway, I worked in-house. I worked for agencies. I worked freelance for a while. I became sort of known as a creative marine, so to speak, where actually when ad agencies would get stuck, they would bring me in and I would kind of like come up with crazy ideas and then leave. And it was great because I didn't have to get involved with all the nitty gritty stuff that I sort of hated. And I learned very quickly, like, that's my special. I'm a very good writer. I can write, I can do those things. But when it came to the big stuff, the big ad campaign stuff, like that's where I was better suited. But more importantly, at a certain point, I started realizing and paying a lot closer attention to how I was even selling myself and what people thought of me and what my brand was. And there was an article Tom Peters wrote, about your personal brand and stuff like that. And what's sort of interesting about that article that I think a lot of people forget is that he wasn't saying that you should become a brand, just like Target is a brand or, Tide is a brand or whatever. He was saying that you should use the principles that companies use for branding in order to improve yourself and make yourself more sellable, because by doing that, you will, that will improve your brand. So he understood what I think a lot of people in marketing and advertising don't actually realize about branding, which which is that branding itself is a scam, right? Like branding agencies that say, oh, you need to do all your branding ahead of time and you need to get your messaging done first. That's not how brands are built. That's never been how brand. You look at the greatest brands that exist right now. I always use these examples of Avis and Tums. And, if I have a stomach ache right now, I'm 45 years old. When I have a stomach ache, I comes to mind is Alka-Seltzer and Tums. Why? Because they spend billions of dollars on good advertising that showed up on the most powerful medium of the world, television. They have that place in my mind right now. And Avis, we're number two, we try harder. They didn't go to a branding agency and say, okay, what's our messaging? And then they determined that, and then that was handed over to DDB. No, the ad was successful, so it created the brand. Branding is about what you do, right? And it could be created through in advertising. It could be created through your customer service. It could be created through your product. Apple does all three, right? But definitely it's not about your brand and what you say it is, right? And I think that people who understand that and then go and bring that knowledge to their personal brand have a lot more success with their personal brand than people that view branding as a thing in marketing and advertising, and then bringing that to your personal life. It becomes a disaster, because if you think about what the big brands are doing, they're spending billions of dollars to not look like a brand, right? To be more relatable to people and to a person. You're already a person. So why the hell would you want to become that kind of like a brand in the wrong sense of the word? You wouldn't. You have a leg up already. And so it's really about taking those principles and applying it to yourself in order to improve your brand. And some of those involve, like, what are you gonna wear? What kind of outfits you're gonna wear? How you're gonna look? How you're gonna talk? What you're gonna talk about? 100%. But some of that also just says, hey, be a little less lazy, improve your services, become better at something, improve your skills, all the other things that go into, branding, so to speak. So I started paying a lot more attention to that. And what happened is in 2020, I was working in an agency and coronavirus came, and I was a creative director, and the two accounts that I was creative director for basically said, we're pulling it. And so, like many other people, I lost my job, and my wife said, you either are going to start your own agency or you have to find another line of work. So I'm like, I don't know what else to do. So I started my own ad agency, and I based it on sort of brand response, like combining branding and direct response advertising, which I think any good ad does, right? And I used nothing but LinkedIn. I just said, I'm going to just start posting on LinkedIn every day and see what happens. And I had maybe 1,000 followers. And in the beginning, for the first 3 months, 4, 5, 6 likes, then 10 likes, 15 likes, 30 likes, 50 likes, 100 likes a post. I found a sort of groove. I was talking about advertising. People were enjoying my perspective. And then at some point it just blew up. And then I think a year later, I wrote a post that went viral by LinkedIn standards. And it really just sort of took off from them. But even before that, my continual posting was just getting me work. And sometimes in the beginning it was small work, but it was building that momentum. And so it was this consistency, right? This sort of building in public, this sort of, just the freedom to talk about who I was. I wasn't working for an agency. I didn't have any of these things. And so within 3 years, I eventually built my agency to 7 figures and even had a small team. And then 2023 sort of happened, and I kind of burnt out because I am a creative person. I'm not a business person. And just the whole thing of managing this agency. And I kind of saw, because I study advertising history, I kind of saw what was going to happen. I was beginning to understand that the ad agency model is really not necessary anymore. And it was attracting the wrong type of clients. And it was, the stuff I was working on wasn't like fun and exciting. And I kind of strangled along in 2023. And what started happening is that people started DMing me on LinkedIn, asking me if I can do for myself do for them what I did for myself on LinkedIn. If I could just start writing on LinkedIn. I have to be completely honest. At first I was like, no, like that's not me. I'm an ad guy. I don't want to be that content producer. Like I don't want to be like these sleazy people on LinkedIn that are selling these courses and telling you to get more followers and stuff because it's on its own BS. Like like that's not me. Then I just didn't want to do the advertising anymore. I found this other company called Lytro, which is kind of like a network of creatives, freelance creatives, and you basically hire them to work on various projects and they put the teams together for you. And so I basically became an ECD with Lytro, and now just all of my ad clients will funnel them through there. That's what I continue to do because I still continue to attract advertising clients. And so I bring them into Lytro and they're more than happy. They love it. Like it's a really, really great program. Um, but what happened is like at some point in the middle of 2023, I read this article about LinkedIn ghostwriters and how they're making $700 an hour. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's serious money. I can probably do that. And so I didn't create a website. I didn't offer webinars. I didn't do any of that funnel bullcrap. All I did was continue to write the post as I always have about advertising and then said, hey, if you're an ad agency owner or if you're, working advertising and you want to write posts like this, but you don't have the time or you don't know what to write about or whatever, I said, DM me because I'm offering exclusive, executive tailored ghostwriting and coach writing services. There's subtle distinction between the two, for a few people. And I got one sign up, two sign up, three signups, and the signups are still with me today. And then after a while, this began to form into a business. And so I teamed up with a friend of mine, Aaron Zukowski, who was the original person who told me that I should be doing this and who I rejected his plea. I said, hey, you know what? This actually turned into a business. So he comes from the performance marketing world and is very familiar with using the ads and the networks on, the advertising and performance marketing stuff on LinkedIn. So we teamed up together to form Genius Scouts, which is a little homage to my advertising legend hero, Howard Love Gossage, who, besides his ad agency, had a consultancy called Generalists, where he just kind of helped brands and people solve problems by, using creativity, not necessarily advertising. But part of what Generalists also did was this thing called Genius Scouting, where they went out and they found people who were just like exceptional people, all introduced them to the business world. Their first client was Marshall McLuhan, where they helped make famous. And so that's what I want to do. I basically want to do that. So we call ourselves Genius Scouts. And that's where the primary focus that I'm in right now, which is helping executives, leaders, entrepreneurs, particularly in advertising and marketing, but our clients are also in finance and in other places. The key is that they need to be a sort of dynamic individual. We're not dealing with people who have nothing going on and are we know that, there's going to be too much work that's going to be needed in order to make this person famous. And we use the word famous and we help them establish their personal brand, on social media and using all the same things that a big ad agency for big brands would do. And we take that and apply it to individuals. So we're kind of like an ad agency for people, which is something that's never existed before. People, executives and people who, famous individuals usually have publicists and PR people, which handle their relationship with the media. But what they often want is somebody or an or a company or people to help them just with that personal brand part, just with the messaging part, just with establishing who they are and using even, paid advertising and paid services to boost, to boost that and have a little bit direct relationship with the consumer. So we work with PR agencies, but that's not, and sometimes we do PR, sometimes we reach out on behalf of our clients, but that's not the main crux of what we do. With really doing the advertising side. of it, but for people.
It's really interesting. I'm curious, what kind of results are you able to generate in this model?
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm proof of it. So I do nothing for my clients that I haven't done for myself, with the exception of we're beginning to now test the paid part of it, right? Which I never did before for myself. So my belief is that it will just accelerate the growth. I view organic LinkedIn very much as a brand awareness play more than a direct response play. It really is about that consistency. And so if you can actually pay to have certain posts appear in front of certain people consistently over and over again, even if they never engage with them, that builds this level of trust. They get to know you. They see you over and over again, just like advertising is supposed to be. And the results we have, even without that, just from the organic posting, when our clients listen to us, is astounding. I mean, we have one client, we have the CMO that just, and we can't mention who they are, but if I did, you'd be like, okay, makes sense. We have other several clients that, um, are getting invited more on more podcasts, are getting quoted more in the trade presses, are definitely seeing an uptick in clients, an easier job getting clients. We had one client recently um, who actually is not in advertising at all. They're actually working the trades. They own a large company in the trades, and they were at a trade show. And he's like, people just kept walking up to me and saying, hey, man, I love your content on LinkedIn. I love, like, it's such a unique style. It's such a blah, blah, blah. And, he reported that back to me. And so we're just seeing that across the level. I mean, granted, there's cheating involved in the sense that we're only working with people that we believe we can help. And I think in that sense, we're very honest. We're not taking people's money. And part of that is that we feel like I have to see immediately that you're an interesting person, that you have stuff going on, that you're dynamic, that you got energy. Because, like one of the things we do, when I say ghostwriting, right? So ghostwriting is just one of our services. But we treat ghostwriting very much like traditional ghostwriting. We're not writing the book for you. I consider people, if someone writes a book for you, that's copywriting, right? If somebody's writing content for you, that's copywriting. Ghostwriting for me is very much like, I'm your ghost. We're going to do this together. We're going to talk. I'm going to do the writing, but we're going to work on this post together. And every client has a different relationship of how that happens. But, I'm pulling the ideas out of you. If I have no ideas to pull out of you, I'm not going to work with you. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that those are the only types of people that I can help. And so, not to say that somebody who is boring can't reinvent themselves. And we're working on a course for them, right? How to make yourself more interesting, how to make but for our services, for our white glove services, so to speak, that's what we deal with. I started this a year and a half ago, and I have 3 clients that are still with us after a year and a half, and already word of mouth us to other people. I mean, that's the hard part, is like we can't talk about our clients, and we can't, so we rely very heavily on that word of mouth. Um,
Right.
and and myself as an example.
So, what are the goals of the folks that are hiring you to help with their personal brand? Is it just to raise general awareness? Is it to get more speaking opportunities? Or like you were saying, like when they come into it and they're like, okay, I want you to do this for me. What is their desired outcome that you work towards with them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I'll tell you personally, the first time I ever worked on my personal brand before I even thought about doing this was 13, 14 years ago. When I first got into advertising, I was married to my wife, and I had a daughter. And then we got divorced. And then about 2 or 3 years into that divorce, I realized that I made a huge mistake. But I also realized that in order to get my wife back, my ex-wife back, it would take a lot of work. So unconsciously, what I did is I created a rebranding campaign, and I rebranded myself, which consisted of everything from branding to direct response type marketing, very targeted text messages to her, reminding her, certain, if I've already told her all of this, and, whether I manipulated her or not, we're happy now. It's fine. But the point is, writing apology letters to the people surrounding her, but then also, most importantly, working on myself and rebranding myself into a person, not necessarily that the perfect man for her or whatever, but just because, sometimes, what women want is not really what they want, and, but into a better man. And I'm doing a lot of research into what that is, and then applying rebranding tactics, but to myself. And so my goal there, and rebranding myself and doing the messaging and working on my personal brand there, was to win back my wife. And ultimately it worked. And I did it. Um, I know people love that story. And so, and then honestly, when people say, like, prove to me that it works, this is the story that I always tell, because this is the most useful. And when you ask me, what's the most successful ad campaign you've ever worked on, this is always my answer. I would use this answer sometimes even strategically during job interviews. What's the most important ad campaign? Best thing, and then I give this answer, and I'd get hired. Like, because, like, how are you gonna? Who's gonna top that, right? So, especially since it worked. But, so our clients range from everyone from increase leads, get more leads. Now, we don't necessarily promise that. I mean, we do offer services to help manage that and inbound and stuff like that. But again, we remind them that the main point of the personal branding is, like, this is warm, right? This is to warm up people for the leads, because I would notice that I would post, I posted every day on LinkedIn for 4 years. And consistently, the people who contacted me on LinkedIn to work with me, when I would go and I would check, we wouldn't be connected. Some of them wouldn't necessarily even be following me. They would just be consistently seeing my stuff appear from their followers, likes and stuff. Some of them were following me, but 99.9% of them had never liked a post or even commented on it. So likes and comments, I realized very early on, mean nothing in the sense of the direct sale. They're very important, because otherwise people are not going to know about you, stuff like that. And for the views and stuff. But I realized very on that advertising and marketing is not a buy now business. It's very much, you need to keep in front of people with whatever it is that you're doing. And so when they're ready to buy, they come to you. And so we remind people of that, and that, if they want increased lead, they're going to have to do some paid ads, and they're going to, but we make sure that the paid ads is all around the personal brand. It's like everything is around that person. So some of it's leads. Other people are in a certain position and they want to move to a higher position or get a job at a different company for more money. And so they're rebranding themselves for that purpose. Other people are just trying to create more leads, make it and more business for their business, not necessarily for them. So in the first example, I mean it when it's kind of like they're the brand, they're the company, they're the whatever. But then some people are like CEOs of studios and this and that, and so they're trying to make it, or law firms and whatever, and so they're trying to make it easier to get more business for their business. And some of them they're like entrepreneurs. They're involved in a lot of different things. They're actors coming, either they're actors. Ryan Reynolds is not a client yet, but I don't think he needs me. But they're actors like Ryan Reynolds, and they're getting involved in the business world, and so they need that kind of introduction into the business world, and sort of almost like an agency that helps them do that. Academics, actors, musicians, stuff like that, as well as, executives, and sort of introducing them and giving them greater authority. We rotate around a lot of different words, but we give, greater authority, greater influence, and becoming more famous to the business world. And we use the word famous on purpose. It's a big word, and it's a big promise word, and it repels some people, but we truly believe that, look, at the end of the day, I agree with Bob Hoffman that advertising and marketing, the goal of it should be to become famous. You should want your advertising and marketing to make you famous, because when you are famous, everything becomes easier and less expensive, right? When Brad Pitt wants to eat at a certain restaurant that's booked until next year, but he wants to eat there tonight, he's going to get in because he's famous. If he created, ads for himself, I'm not saying that he has to, his, his click-through rates and stuff like that, his CPMs, all of that will be very low because people already know who he is, right? So being famous makes everything more, and easier. And people say, well, I don't need to be famous like Donald Trump. And I'm like, why not? Why wouldn't you want to be? And I'm saying, I'm not promising to get you there, but that should 100% be your goal, because, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? The universe wants you to be famous. It wants you, it wants you to have more so that you can do more good things, right? So we're not afraid to use the word fame, but we oscillate between the word fame, relevance, authority, and people want those things for all different sorts of reasons. Some of them are, egotistical. Some of them are with a certain goal in mind, but it's very clear that no matter what it is, it will make whatever they're doing now and in the future easier to do.
I think that's a great insight. And I can also see that a lot of executives that I've worked with at larger companies, that they have a lot to do. They probably don't have the time to, on their own, sit down and write for LinkedIn every day. They can collaborate with someone like you, but I just can't see a lot of very successful, extremely busy people carving out the time to do it all on their own. Like, it doesn't seem very realistic. And it's not a traditional PR sort of task, right? Like, I've been at companies where a lot of times the executives asked, oh, can you manage my social media? Can the marketing team manage the social media for the C-suite executives? And what that meant was, like, every time we put out a press release, we post from their accounts on it. I mean, it wasn't like this thought leadership, building authority thing like you're talking about. It was really more just a very glancing blow. So I think that this is something that, because of the way the algorithms work and because of the time investment it takes, I don't know that a lot of people who probably could fit the model that you're talking about, I don't think it makes sense for them to do it themselves, right? It from a time perspective, it makes sense that they might pay someone something like $700 an hour, because what is their time worth, right? It makes sense to me. Is that sort of what you've seen?
It's 100%. Those are all really good and valid points. It's 100% what I've seen, and why we're very particular about who we work with, because in a way, I want you to be too busy doing things to do this yourself. Because in a way, actually, I truly believe actually that the best content that you can create is not the stuff that you're going to think and write on LinkedIn, but the stuff that you're going to do that's going to get talked about, right? If you look at the best personal brands, right? The people who are doing this the best, who are not even thinking in terms of, like, the highest level you can get to is when you're not even actually the word personal branding, by the way. I just use it because I have to, in order for people to make sense about what I'm talking about. But like people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, they're not thinking about personal brand. This is just, in a way, who they are. What they understand is how to use the media and how to use social media. So both the media and social media, in order to get attention, right? I mean, they're taking a playbook out of the person that the only person that you need to really study if you want to build your personal brand, which is PT Barnum, which is do whatever you need to do to get attention, as long as what you deliver is higher end than what you did to get the attention, you're going to be fine. Like P.T. Barnum would humbug tons of people. He would write, I got a Fiji mermaid. And then he would write an op-ed in one paper about how it's fake, and then another one in a paper about how it's real. And all of these things. He would create all this controversy, and people would show up and they'd see it. They'd see that it's obviously fake. They would realize that P.T. Barnum arranged all of this, but they didn't care because they walked into his museum, and his museum was, so there was so much more to see there. So what he delivered was always greater than the humbug. And so, like, it became like a thing. People loved getting humbug by P.T. Barnum. You see that with Donald Trump, and you see that with Elon Musk. In a way, people hate and love it at the same time when Musk does something crazy like Twitter or, whatever it is. Like you see that these people, they really understand how to do it and they're not thinking about personal brands. But what else do these people have? Donald Trump and Elon Musk, immense amounts of energy, right? And so I believe that there actually are heavily involved in this part and they have people running the other stuff. I think that this is where they realize if they have attention, then they're not doing the things, they're not filming themselves and editing their videos. There's a video of Donald Trump actually talking to a woman who's writing her tweets for her during, you see those, it's a rare glimpse into how, he's not necessarily sitting there tweeting himself. I mean, I'm sure he does sometimes, but you see he's dictating to somebody. People are weighing in a little bit and he's listening. And that's what I mean, the ghostwriting, they're somewhat involved with me. Donald Trump in his book, he even put his ghostwriter on his cover. Like he didn't care, right? Like he very much did that. And so having that energy is extremely important for, if you want your brand to grow. I always say that there's 3 types of clients that came to me when I was doing the ghostwriting: those who didn't know what to write about, those who didn't have time to write, and those who didn't know how to write. Right. And right. So, and we deal with all 3. It doesn't really matter. But I always tell them, this is not going to be a wham, bam, done for you thing. Like you have to want to be like, this is your personal brand. If you're not a part of it, it's not a personal brand, right? Like you are the object, you are the ad, you are the product. And so I can't do anything with you if you're not involved. And, I think another real example, Gary Vaynerchuk, right? And Gary Vaynerchuk definitely, he started this raw by filming. He did it. He was doing it himself, filming the videos for Wine Library and stuff like that. Now he's got a whole team around him, right? But he does still, like, I think he lives up to is like, I think he still does post things like on the whiteboard and stuff like that. He is still very involved in that process, probably more than the other things that he's doing, because he's the product and he's the personal brand. And so how could he not be? But again, with Gary Vaynerchuk, what does he have? What's like that one element? It's the energy. You have to have that energy. And by the way, I think too, a lot of the people who sell personal branding courses and personal branding services on LinkedIn, who are like then selling you a course and saying, hey, you can go do it yourselves. Be very careful about that because first of all, it's the easiest thing to sell, right? Selling LinkedIn on LinkedIn or selling those services, selling copywriting, selling copywriting through copywriting it's psychologically can be very tricky, like can trick you very, very well. But take a very good look at the people who are doing it. You'll notice that they all have something in common. They all have a lot of energy and they're all very dynamic. They're all very good in front of the camera. They're all they have a personality already that they can use, right? There's something about them that's magnetic. And so if you have to be very honest with yourself. If you don't have those things, then you need to find a way to work on those things and build those things and create those things. And by the way, AI is not going to help you do that. So if you do cookie cutter AI content, if you buy their service to take your thoughts and have AI churn it out, you're never going to build a personal brand. You're never going to build a unique voice. You're never going to do those things. So I would actually say, if you don't have those things, you need to never not use AI for an entire year. I mean it. You need to write your own posts, think for yourself, struggle. Nothing good ever came out from doing things the easy way in the beginning, and build a personal brand and then use AI to leverage that and to scale that, right? Because AI can mimic you, but it can't create you. So it needs something to go off of. That's a whole separate point, but
it's more likely to beigeify you than to build a great brand.
Or will beigeify you if you're beige. If you're beige, if
Yeah.
you've got nothing going, if you don't have a unique voice. And by the way, a lot of people say, "Oh, my unique voice." Most people do not have a unique voice, because unique voice is not your word choice or this or that. Writing is about how you think. Writing is thinking. Somebody asked me what the two things are. Like two things to help build a personal brand. Get when you're getting started. The only thing that you need to figure out in the beginning is what you stand for and what you stand against. And then use those two things to then write all of your content. A piece can be about what you stand against, and it can be about what you stand for. And just make sure that those things are damn interesting, and don't be afraid to be opinionated, and do not be afraid that people will disagree with you, because that is where you get the engagement. That is where you get the views. That is where you get all of these things. I say stupid things all the time. The key is that if you say something stupid or wrong or whatever, and somebody corrects you, then go and be like, oh my God, you're right. I never thought of it that way. Thank you so much. And that's going to shock the hell out of people, because very few people actually admit that they're wrong online ever. Right. But if you believe you're right, hold your ground, get into an argument, invite them onto onto a chat, record it. But everything becomes content at that point. Right. And you just, it takes energy, right, to do that. So again, we keep coming back to that really excellent point that you made.
I love that advice. Find out what you stand for and what you stand against. I think that's really great to defining a unique view. Let me ask you, on this journey you've been on for developing your own personal brand and helping others do it, what's the most valuable thing that you've learned on this journey?
Well, I think the most valuable thing that I've learned is that overthinking is your worst enemy. I have clients in the beginning, they're always like, they go over every single post as if it's going to be like a Super Bowl ad. Oh, do I really want to say that? Do I really want to say that right now? Do I really want, right? And they really overthink things. They forget about how they read other people's posts, how they read, like they think that everyone's going to sit there with a magnifying glass and obsess over their, like, and that's not it at all. It's last thing, I have no illusions. I don't think people are obsessed with me. For example, and this is always my approach with my clients is very unstructured, right? We speak once a week or twice a week, depending on the package, right? And say, what are we talking about this week? Because the way average people use social media, they don't plan their content. My mom doesn't plan her content. She's like, well, next week I'm going to, so-and-so's wedding. So I got to make sure to post 3 pictures and this and that. No. Right. But that's the content. That's what you're competing against. So Howard Gossage has this great thing that I think, that I brought down into the personal branding world as well, which is that advertising your ad is not competing with other ads. What is advertising? Advertising is a message that you pay for to appear on somebody else's platform or media, right? And so it's like a TV commercial or it's an ad on social media or whatever, right? An organic social media post is not advertising because it's not paid for, right? But even then, like in the sense that it has a marketing goal or whatever, for the sake of that purpose, let's call that advertising, right? Those posts are not competing with other posts that are like it. You're not competing with other people trying to sell the same thing as you are. You're competing with the content of that platform. So if you're making a TV commercial, you're competing with the television show. If you're creating a print ad, you're competing with the articles. If you're creating social media posts, you're competing with the normal organic use of that platform, right? You're competing against somebody, you're competing against somebody stalking their ex-girlfriend. You're competing against, somebody's pictures of their vacation. That's what you're, right? And so what Howard Gossage says is, therefore, your content should match the organic content of that platform as closely as possible, and should strive to be better than it in that sense. Yeah. So you've seen that in TV commercials. There are some TV commercials that are better than the shows that they were on, right? That they interrupted. They're, with better storytelling or that were equally. There's some magazines that were more famous for their ads right, than the articles in it. Or like the New Yorker was famous for having both. That comes to social media, that means that your marketing or advertising kind of needs to be thoughtless, as unstructured as whatever, as a social media post is, right? And so with my clients, we don't use content calendars. We don't plan things out. We just, what are we talking about right now? You know, when the Jaguar thing came out, I was like, okay, what do you want to say? What's your opinion about the Jaguar thing? Let's post it. "Ah, everybody's talking about it. I don't want to join that conversation." I'm like, who the hell do you think you are? If people are sitting there waiting for you, well, you need to say something, right? But let's make it interesting. Let's find something that's like a different angle on it that's going to make people like stop and consider you in the noise. Right? So that's the important thing. I want to just mention one other thing because I remember it, so my ad legends like Howard Gossage, David Ogilvie. If you work in advertising, you run an advertising agency. Those are the two, but there's a third people that you should study. P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum was a marketing machine. He invented brand campaigns. He invented personal branding. He invented so many of the PR publicity. He invented so many of the things that we do today. He did it all himself. He was just a man of immense energy, right? He believed that your first year in business, after you pay yourself and pay the loans and whatever, you take 100% of your profit and you put it towards what he called publicity, which was the word for marketing back then, publicity. He's like, so much so, you should put it all in there to the point where you don't even know where to spend it. And so you start coming up with extravagant ways to do it. And he gives examples of like the weird things that he would do in his book, in his autobiography. You study him, you study Howard Gossage, but a really good person studies David Ogilvie. David Ogilvie was the master at using personal branding, personal publicity. So that's somebody who you should study very, very well.
Amazing. This has been an awesome discussion on personal branding. I'm going to link to your LinkedIn so people can get in touch if they'd like to learn more. And we really appreciate you sharing all of your insights and these awesome stories with us today. Thank you so much.